With the SNES Classic Edition hitting the shelves next Friday, September 29th, we found it appropriate to go over our hidden gems for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. None of these games are featured on the SNES Classic, though all of them in their own way truly deserve a spot. Now these are just our selections, and if you have any games you feel should be on the list, please leave them down in the comment section below. Without further ado, I'm Brian from LevelDownGames.com, and here's our top 10 hidden gems on the SNES. Our number 10 game is one of the few movie video games surprisingly not to suck. A classic beat-em-up style of game if there ever was one, Batman Returns is very similar graphically to Final Fight and even plays extremely similar too. Dare we say that this game is even better than its source material? Actually, that sounds like a good idea for a future top 10 list. In at number 9 is Artie Lightfoot, a platforming game starring the titular character, a cat-like creature aided by his friend, a little blue penguin named Peck. In an awesome turn of events, Peck can be used as a weapon or an item in the game, though be careful, as he disappears if Artie takes damage. To avoid taking that damage, Artie can jump around with his spring-coiled tail. Think Scrooge McDuck with his cane from the classic DuckTales. The plot is finding the 7 shards of the rainbow which grant you a wish, a very cliché thing. You even get a 1-up if you collect 100 stars, but the game itself is really fun and worth a playthrough. The number 8 pick is Run Saber, a side-scrolling action game from Atlas much akin to Strider. The plot is pretty awesome. A scientist blows off a missile filled with a chemical into the Earth's atmosphere to solve pollution, but really, it mutates all the people on Earth to serve him in his quest for domination. When booting up the game, players have a choice between sabers. There's Alan, the male character, and Sheena, the female character. After making a choice, you're sent off to different areas around the world, littered with enemies and bosses to defeat. Each character has a special affinity as well, with Sheena's being ice and Alan's being lightning. In fact, there's even a third saber with a special fire affinity named Kurtz, but he is an enemy that players must face off against several times throughout the narrative. This game does not disappoint. For our number 7 pick, we look to Rock 'n' Roll Racing, a game that centered around vehicles and combat a few years before Twisted Metal even was a thing, but it also still maintains some elements of racing. The soundtrack here is the star. The songs included Paranoid by Black Sabbath, Highway Star by Deep Purple, and Born to be Wild by Steppenwolf. The game even featured Olaf the Stout from the Lost Vikings as a secret character. This game was simply awesome. Fun fact, this was developed by a little company known as Silicon and Synapse, who would later go on to become Blizzard Entertainment. Yes, that Blizzard. Warcraft, Starcraft, Diablo, Hearthstone, Heroes of the Storm, Overwatch. Who would have ever thought that back in 1993? The number 6 pick in our series is none other than Demon's Crest, the third game to be released in the Gargoyles Quest series, which itself was a side collection of games spawned from the Ghosts and Goblins games. Demon's Crest released in 1994 for the SNES thanks to Capcom. Another side-scrolling platform game, there sure was a lot of these back then, wasn't there? Demon's Crest tasked gamers to become the bad guy. That's right, you played as Firebrand in his quest to stop the guy who was even more dastardly and more villainous than he was. This game sold very poorly when it first came out, so poorly in fact, that it was one of the biggest financial flops of its time. What's strange is that despite the fact it flopped hard, Demon's Crest is actually a pretty good game. For our number 5 pick, we selected Sunset Riders, a side-scrolling game where you had to keep on running and keep on shooting. This also was a port of the arcade game of the same name. One thing we all assume is that the Wild West was a lawless place where criminals could run rampant. One of the evilest and baddest criminals around, Sir Richard Rose, has accumulated a ton of power through various means and now controls the entire mining operation, ranches, and the trade system. That actually sounds pretty bad. Just when things are looking like they'll never be able to turn around, 4 men ride into town with one goal: take down Sir Richard Rose and make the Wild West a place where people can feel safe and a place that people actually want to be. Sure, The plot sounds all kinds of silly, but the game actually was really well done. Number 4 is Capcom's The King of the Dragons. Let me ask you a question. Are you a fan of Dungeons & Dragons? How about games like Champions of Norath, Baldur's Gate, and The Bard's Tale? If you answered yes to any of those things, chances are you'll really enjoy The King of Dragons. It's a co-op hack-and-slash game with action RPG elements baked in. The story is about as run-of-the-mill as it can get for a basic role-playing game. But it's the gameplay we're here for, and the gameplay that landed this game at the number 4 spot. Packed with different stages to explore and a cast of enemies to defeat along the way, this game will have those seeking an adventure wrapped up in it for quite some time. Coming in at number 3 is The Twisted Tales of Spike McFang, a relatively obscure, quirky, and light-hearted action RPG. The game follows the journey of a young vampire prince and his friends as they attempt to stop an evil zombie force from conquering the world. The ultimate goal is to restore Spike's father, Dracumin, back to power. To do this, you'll need to assist Spike through 9 different islands, using different magical abilities along the way and taking down the bad guys of each area. Honestly, there isn't much to this story, and it's very linear, but there is a good cartoony charm to this game. Even though he's a vegetarian, he's still a better vampire than Edward Cullen. For our number 2 pick, we selected Saturday Night Slam Masters, a pro wrestling game released by Capcom. The game features character designs by manga artist Tetsuya Hara, famous for Fist of the North Star. It plays sort of like a combo of Street Fighter II and Final Fight, and in fact, Hagar from Final Fight is a playable wrestler in this game. We'd even argue that this has a lot better presentation than the official WWF games that were made by Acclaim during the same time. When coming up for a list of hidden gems for the SNES, our number 1 choice was obvious. Plok is the definition of a hidden gem and is a quirky and wholesome platformer. This game even got the attention of Shigeru Miyamoto, who wanted to work on the project but couldn't due to time constraints. If you have listened to any of our BG Mania episodes, you'll already be familiar with Plok and how much this game means to El Francaro. It looks like a combination of Yoshi's Island fused with elements of Contra, and let me tell you, it's a freaking awesome mashup. Plok fights by launching his hands and feet at enemies, and there are puzzle mechanics where you leave your limbs to solve. There are secondary weapons throughout in the forms of cartoon presents, and they give Plok neat outfits like boxing gear or a hunter's uniform with a deerskin cap. The music from this game is top-notch as well. Seriously, check out the soundtrack. And that's our list for the top 10 hidden gems on the SNES. Did we completely forget about something else that deserves to be on this list? Let us know down in the comments section below if we did. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, share, and subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Once you're done with that, and if you want to stay up to date on all things Level Down Games, you can follow us on Twitter at OriginalLDG, find us on Facebook, and follow us over at twitch.tv/LevelDownGames for all of our live streams. We have 3 podcasts weekly, including our video game podcast, Max Level, a podcast dedicated to soundtracks and video game music known as BG Mania, and one all about the world of professional wrestling in the Gorgeous Lads of Wrestling. Another thing we do is Game Oracles, a video game trailer show every Tuesday, and Bonus Stage, a minigame every Wednesday. We also produce reviews for the latest releases, do unboxings, let's plays, and so much more. All of our content can also be found over at our main home on the internet, and hopefully yours as well, leveldowngames.com. Until next time, keep on gaming.